What is geoengineering?
It's really two very different things. One is ways that we would alter the amount of sunlight the Earth absorbs, and so cool the planet, partly offsetting the effects of carbon in the atmosphere, and that's called solar radiation management, or in some technocratic way, SRM. And the other one is to take carbon out of the atmosphere, so-called carbon dioxide removal.
Before we get on to solar radiation management, let me ask you about the carbon dioxide removal. A Royal Society report here in the United Kingdom back in 2009 said that no method of carbon dioxide removal has yet been demonstrated to be effective at an affordable cost with acceptable environmental impacts, and they only work to reduce temperatures over very long timescales.
I think that's exactly right, and I can say that both as an author of that report and as somebody running a startup company trying to capture CO2 from the air.
Before we get into the pros and cons of it, how solar radiation management might work.
Conceptually, it's simple. The doing it is not the hard part, but you could use aircraft or other methods to deliver literally tons or millions of tons of very small reflective aerosols, tiny particles, say, to the upper atmosphere.
Spraying them out at a high altitude.
Correct.
Isn't one of the problems with the climate and studying the climate is that it's incredibly difficult to know exactly how it works. It is very difficult to model.
Sure, it's impossible to know exactly, but you can still learn a lot. So we actually ran a survey almost a year ago now that took data, high-quality data, from 1,000 people in the UK, Canada, and the US to try and understand public support for research on these technologies and what kind of political leanings influence people's decision to be for or against. And in fact, we found pretty broad support for research.
But that particular opinion survey that you're talking about, it also came up with the finding that 64% of subjects agree that humans should not be manipulating nature in the way suggested by solar radiation management.
Exactly.
Well, that would suggest that there isn't particularly broad support at the moment for the theory behind this.
There's not broad support for doing it, and I think that's quite a healthy thing. I mean, I'm one of the people who, maybe starting 20 years ago, most helped to open the door to get public conversation going on this thing.
How do you think, in that case, the public can be convinced, given that there is, as we saw with this project in Britain, tremendous skepticism, even about research at what you say is a very, very benign level?
Public opinion will evolve over a long time, and from my point of view, the goal is to try and make that public opinion be able to be shaped by facts as well as possible, and also shaped by people's values. It's not to promote this. So actually,
well, it is in part to promote this. I mean, you're a great enthusiast for this, and as you said, you have your own private company, which is...
my private company works on a very different part of it, which doesn't suffer from these governance challenges.
But it is all to do with the issue of geoengineering. I mean, you know, it's an incredibly sensitive topic.
I actually don't think my job is promoting it. My job is to help clear thinking and clear knowledge about the tools we have to regulate climate risk, among them this one. And I'm perfectly prepared to find that results show that we should never do this. So if it works, and again, we don't know it does, it provides some protection in the near term.
Isn't there a problem, though, that you could end up with different effects in different parts of the world? I mean, you could, for example, find that although you're reducing the amount of sunlight and the amount, therefore, that the Earth is warming up, rainfall is affected in different ways in different parts of the world.
Absolutely. Essentially, the scientists and technocrats, including myself, I guess, are helping to invent a thermostat knob. But it's much easier to invent the knob than to figure out who should be in charge of it in a world with many states.
No, indeed, and I want to come on to the governance, but I want to ask specifically about the science of this, which is how far can you tell whether the effects of solar radiation management are then going to cause perhaps a catastrophic loss of rainfall in a certain part of the world. At the moment, it seems to be hazy, this.
I think it's not as hazy as that. So using exactly the same climate models as we've used to estimate the problems with CO2 in the atmosphere, the underlying climate problem, we've applied those same models and same techniques to look at this. And the results so far, I have to say, look pretty good. That's why we're paying any attention to it.
Richard Branson himself, who owns the Virgin Airline Group, was quoted back in 2009 in the New York Times saying, if we could come up with a geoengineering answer to this problem, we could carry on flying our planes and driving our cars.
Is going to cost a lot of money.
And yet I mean, let's be clear here, you and your company are after Branson's money.
The cheapest thing to do is to use the atmosphere as a waste dump. And if we want to stop doing that, we must have laws that restrict the ability to use the atmosphere as a waste dump.
My question is, are you not concerned that you and your company, Carbon Engineering, is looking for money from people like Richard Branson? It's funded, I think, in part by Murray Edwards, who is a key figure in tar sands, which is seen as one of the dirtiest fuels on the planet.
It is.
Are you not slightly concerned about the people who you're getting into bed with?
I'm happy to take money from serious folks who have a broad set of interests. No problem. First of all, I should say, for work on SRM, on these very high leverage technologies that have security concerns, I believe there should be no private action, there should be no for-profit action. I believe it would make sense for SRM to actually restrict or eliminate the possibility of patenting.
Isn't your company involved in several patents at the moment?
This is the difference. So for capturing CO2 from the air, that's an encapsulated small technology, which can be regulated by the normal laws. It's inherently expensive, so there's no risk of sucking all the CO2 out of the air because it costs so much. Any technology you have that removes CO2 will have local risks, maybe unacceptable risks, but those risks can be managed by the normal local risk management we have. So I think that I'm happy to see private action on cutting emissions by making solar power or electric vehicles or capture from air. I'm not happy to see public action on technologies with this huge leverage, like putting particles in the stratosphere.